Celeste Barber had been working at Maverick Communications for 7 years. She had started from the very beginning, when the company was just a small group of passionate and ambitious people. As a marketing expert, Celeste always poured her heart and soul into each strategy and campaign she built. She loved her work, loved the brainstorming sessions with the team, and loved the feeling when strategies came to life and helped major brands grow every day. She was dedicated to her work, believing that it wasn't just a job, but a passion, a way to prove her worth. Her life might not have been perfect, but her work was where she found peace and joy. Her husband, Jack, a man with a stable job, always supported her in every decision. Although there were occasional small arguments due to work stress, Celeste always trusted in their love and Jack's unwavering support. She believed that a successful career would be the solid foundation for their happy family. But all of that seemed to change one March morning when Laura Green, a newly appointed executive director, walked into the company with an air of confidence and bold plans. Laura, with her impressive resume and endless praise from the board of directors, quickly caught everyone's attention. Not only did she have a cold, sharp appearance, but her fresh ideas seemed to demand respect from everyone around her. Celeste knew that change was inevitable, but she never imagined it would affect her in such a damaging way. She first noticed small changes at the first meeting with the new management. The strategies she had painstakingly built were suddenly replaced by impractical ideas that were presented persuasively. She found herself being overlooked, seen as an unimportant part of the new leadership's plans. Still, Celeste tried to maintain her professionalism, working hard, believing that as long as she produced results, everything would change for the better. Months went by, and as things slowly shifted, Celeste began to feel that the company was heading in the wrong direction. Her marketing strategies, which had once proven successful, were no longer valued. Her creative input seemed to be disregarded in favor of dry reports on profits and revenues. It was as though her efforts no longer mattered to the new leadership. But not all of this had come as a surprise. She had heard whispers of a major change underway in the company. Then the shock came. That day, while working in a meeting room with other executives, Celeste received a call from Sophie Allen, the CEO of Maverick Communications. A strange sensation overwhelmed her as Sophie asked her to come meet her directly. "Celeste, I need to talk to you," Sophie said on the phone, her voice calm and emotionless. Celeste thought nothing of it, assuming it was just a routine business discussion. However, when she entered the executive office, everything had changed. Laura Green sat there, her face cold and her eyes full of challenge, alongside Sophie. She didn't greet Celeste as usual. Instead, she stared at her with a frosty gaze before speaking of a decision Celeste never expected. "Celeste," Sophie began, her voice gentle but firm, "we've decided to change the future strategy. You will no longer hold the position of marketing director. Effective immediately, you will be transitioning to another role." The words hit Celeste like a slap to the face. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The projects she had poured so much energy into, the strategies she had tirelessly crafted, were now nothing more than a pile of discarded papers. But the worst part was that Laura Green had been chosen to replace her. This woman, who had only just joined the company, was now taking over her work and claiming all the credit she had worked so hard to build. "We thank you for your contributions." "Celeste," Sophie continued, her tone void of remorse, "but the company needs a new direction, a new strategy, a fresh perspective." Celeste felt as though she had been kicked out of the game she had helped build. The long days of hard work, The late nights spent contributing to the company now seemed meaningless. She watched Laura, who had no real understanding of marketing, stand there, gracefully accepting all the results Celeste had worked so hard for. The feeling of betrayal, of being discarded in the very place she had once stood firm, was a shock that Celeste couldn't have imagined. As she left the executive office, she couldn't hold back her emotions. Her steps were heavy, as though all her energy had been drained. The feeling of loss, pain, and injustice followed her. But in that very moment, a thought flashed through Celeste's mind. She would not let herself be defeated. Celeste didn't know where to start. The feeling of betrayal still haunted her, but over the past few days, she had discovered a burning fire inside her. She couldn't allow herself to sink into the pain, couldn't let Sophie and Laura's words dictate her life. After many sleepless nights, her mind churned, and she made the decision to start over, not to please anyone, but to prove that she was worthy of everything she had once had, and more. Despite being pushed out of the company, Celeste couldn't give up the career she had dedicated so many years to. She began working quietly, distancing herself from the rumors that surrounded her, and found a small corner in a local cafe near her home, a place where she could focus completely on her work. She was no longer the marketing director at Maverick Communications, but she was still someone with ability, and that was something Celeste knew well. She decided to start her own marketing venture. The project wasn't easy. Celeste had no resources, no team to support her, just herself and an old laptop. She didn't have the money to hire top talent, but she had persistence and creativity every day. She worked late into the night, refining marketing strategies, searching for small partnerships to lay the foundation for her project. She knew there would be times when she'd feel exhausted, but she wouldn't allow herself to stop. A month later, Celeste began to see the first signs of success. The small campaign she built started attracting attention from a few small businesses. While they weren't major names, these brands were willing to trust her abilities. These were the first steps. But they gave her faith, a small but meaningful encouragement. However, the challenges didn't stop there. One morning, after finishing a new strategy for a small brand and sending it out, she received an unexpected call. On the other end was Daniel, a former partner at Maverick Communications, someone Celeste had worked with for many years. His voice wasn't friendly, and there was an unmistakable discomfort in his tone. "Celeste, I need to talk to you about something," Daniel said, his voice cold. "Do you know that the strategies you're creating for your clients are violating the company's copyrights? I've heard from Maverick Communications that they're considering suing you for copying the company's strategies." The words hit Celeste like a slap to the face. She could feel the doubt and disdain in Daniel's voice. She knew this wasn't just idle talk. Maverick Communications wouldn't let it slide and would do everything they could to extinguish the opportunity she was trying to build. She hadn't made any mistakes, but these threats made her feel uneasy. The days that followed were spent clarifying legal matters, contacting a lawyer to protect her rights. Still, Celeste didn't give up. She understood that in this industry, such challenges were inevitable. It was part of the game she had to play. But what mattered was that she wouldn't let those who had betrayed her control her life again. Instead of worrying about things beyond her control, Celeste focused on new strategies, new opportunities she could seize. Then one day, she received another call, this time from Hannah, a well-known investor in the media industry, someone Celeste had met at a marketing conference. She never expected Hannah to take an interest in her project. "Celeste, I've been following your project for a while, and I see great potential. I want to invest in your company, help you scale and grow." This offer was a huge boost. a signal that all of her quiet efforts were finally being recognized. Celeste didn't rush into a decision. She didn't believe in empty promises. But this was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. She needed to be cautious in every step, but she also knew she had to seize the chance when it came. Hannah's call marked a major turning point in Celeste's journey to rebuild her career. The lonely, anxious days she had endured were now being replaced by glimmers of hope, even though they were still faint. With Hannah's support, Celeste began to rebuild her team. The people she had once overlooked now returned, joining her to rebuild everything from the ground up. The team brought not only creativity, but also the renewed trust Celeste desperately needed at this point. But even with the help, challenges still lay ahead. The competition in the industry remained fierce, and every move had to be calculated carefully. However, Celeste was no longer the woman who had failed in front of those who had betrayed her. She now knew how to stand firm, to find opportunities in adversity, never letting herself be defeated. She understood that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was the road she had chosen, and she was ready to face every challenge that came her way. Celeste began to feel that she was on the verge of a major transformation. She was no longer the woman who simply lived day by day, consumed by worries about work and the failures of her past. The months of struggling and pouring her energy into her startup project had begun to yield positive signals, but the challenges never ceased, and it seemed like every step forward came with unexpected, difficult surprises. Her company, though small, had started attracting some notable clients. The marketing campaigns she created not only helped small businesses grow, but also helped them begin to stand out in their industry. One of her key clients was Green Tech, a rising technology company in the renewable energy sector. It was a big contract, one Celeste was particularly proud of because with this project, she knew she could prove to those who had betrayed her that they had been wrong to underestimate her. However, just as things seemed to be going in the right direction, Celeste received an unexpected call from Daniel, a former colleague, and now the marketing director at Maverick Communications. This time, his voice sounded different, not with the contempt or mockery she had previously heard, but with caution. "Celeste, I need you to know something," Daniel said. "Maverick is facing a major issue." Although she knew Maverick Communications wouldn't easily leave her in peace, hearing Daniel mention a big issue made Celeste feel uneasy. The company is being accused of copyright violations, and Laura Green is under investigation. He continued, "It all started when she replaced you and implemented strategies she had no right to own. We're now at risk of losing major clients." This news caught Celeste by surprise. She had known Laura took the strategies she had painstakingly built, but she hadn't imagined that those actions would lead Maverick into such serious trouble. She wondered if this was some form of retribution for those who had betrayed her, even though she didn't want to admit it. Celeste couldn't help but think that perhaps she had become part of Maverick's downfall. The situation worsened as major clients began to pull away, unwilling to continue working with a company on the brink of legal collapse. Although Maverick managed to hold on to some contracts, key partners started looking elsewhere for companies that could meet their needs without the looming legal concerns. At this point, Celeste received yet another call. This time it was from Sophie Allen, the former CEO of Maverick, the very person who had been the first to dismiss her. Sophie asked for a face-to-face meeting, and Celeste felt that something was off. She knew that if Sophie was reaching out, it had to be something serious. Celeste no longer felt the fear or uncertainty she once did, but she couldn't ignore this meeting. When they met, Celeste noticed that Sophie didn't exude the same confidence or coldness she once had. Sophie appeared cautious, anxious, and no longer held the power she once did. Celeste. We made a mistake, Sophie began, not looking directly at Celeste. We were wrong not to listen to you and too hasty in changing the strategy. But the bigger issue is that we're facing a wave of clients leaving, and we're being sued for copyright violations. Everything is falling apart. Sophie didn't exude the same strength she had when she fired Celeste. Now, she was almost pleading for Celeste to return. Celeste remained silent for a moment. She felt as though everything was too coincidental. She never wanted to see the downfall of those who had betrayed her. But at the same time, she couldn't deny that Maverick's failure was a clear testament to the poor choices they had made. By forcing her out, they had made a massive mistake, and now all they could do was ask her for help. I can't go back, Celeste said calmly. But I won't stand on the sidelines. I won't just show you what I'm capable of. I will show everyone that my strategies have real value. I will never allow myself to be pushed down again. At that moment, Celeste was no longer just the woman trying to regain her job. She had become the victor in her own battle. She would prove that success wasn't just about revenge, but a clear statement that she was the creator, the one who controlled everything she had built. For Maverick Communications, their downfall wasn't just the result of management mistakes. It was part of a plan that had been set in motion long ago. Laura and Sophie had made irreversible errors, and Celeste was the one who would show that betrayal always has a price. Celeste felt change was drawing near, like a quiet storm ready to sweep away the old ways. Although everything seemed to be falling back into place for her, she couldn't forget what had happened. Maverick Communications, the ones who had betrayed her, were still there, sinking deeper into trouble. She no longer felt anger, just a calmness, as if everything was falling into place, like a chessboard where she was controlling each move. She knew the change she was heading toward wasn't going to be an easy battle. The threats from Daniel and the old relationships were gradually cornering her, forcing her to wrestle with herself about what she truly wanted. Meanwhile, GreenTech, her important partner, seemed to have found the perfect marketing strategies for sustainable growth. She could feel the power in the new opportunities she was building, but once again, Laura Green reappeared in her life, and this time, it was a real shock. Celeste received a call one late morning, just as she was preparing for a new promotional campaign. Laura's voice came through the phone. Without hesitation or doubt this time, there was a confidence she hadn't heard before. Celeste, I want to meet with you. I know we were wrong. I have no way out. The company is collapsing, and I can't solve it on my own. Celeste stared at her phone, part of her wanting to reject the call, wanting to forget everything that had happened. But she also knew this could be an opportunity she couldn't pass up. She agreed to meet Laura. The meeting didn't last long, but it left Celeste with many thoughts. In the small room, devoid of any grand strategies or plans, Laura began to confess the truth that Celeste had known all along. The company was on the brink of collapse. We were wrong to replace you. Celeste, I underestimated you, and I'm part of this failure, but I can't fix this on my own. Can you help me? Help the company. Celeste listened, no longer feeling any hatred. She had been through enough challenges to realize that life isn't always as we want it, and sometimes the best revenge is indifference, winning through one's own effort. But she also couldn't ignore the truth that the company she had once poured her heart into was on the verge of falling apart. If Laura could change, why couldn't she do the same? Celeste made her decision. She wouldn't return to be a part of the failure. She would beat it from within. I'll help you, but I won't return to my old role. I won't do what I did before. I'll show you a new strategy, a new future. But you'll have to trust me again." Laura didn't say anything, just nodded, with nothing left to lose. This was an opportunity Celeste couldn't ignore. She would prove that her strategy was the right path, not what Laura had brought to the table, not the shadow of past wrong decisions. The next day, Celeste began to implement a bold new strategy for green tech. She introduced bolder, more creative plans, what she had learned from her past failures. She knew that to win, she couldn't walk down the same old paths. She had to innovate, take risks, and sometimes accept failure in order to rise stronger. Each day that passed, Celeste felt the strength of change. GreenTech's partners began to see her as a true strategist. Investors began to show more interest in her company, not for the old, outdated strategies she once displayed, but for the fresh approaches and her ability to quickly recognize opportunities. This further solidified her belief in the decision she had made. However, just as everything seemed to be heading in the right direction, new information forced Celeste to face an unexpected situation. Maverick Communications, under Laura's management, had decided to launch a marketing campaign similar to the one Celeste had used for green tech. This wasn't just blatant copying. It was an unspoken declaration of war. Sophie Allen had directed this move, hoping it would restore some of the company's dwindling reputation. But Celeste wasn't afraid. She knew that no matter what Maverick did, they could never catch up with her. She was already a step ahead, and she had enough creativity to craft unique, differentiated strategies. The game had changed, and now, Celeste was the one controlling it. The big turning point had arrived. The rumors about Maverick's failure were no longer just rumors. They became a reality when their biggest clients began to shift to NovaX, Celeste's new company. This wasn't just revenge. It was proof of her true worth. What she had built from the ashes was now taking shape, a small but solid empire capable of competing with the industry's biggest names. Celeste never imagined an ending like this. She didn't need to confront those who had betrayed her directly, nor did she need to prove them wrong. What she needed to do was keep moving forward, continuing to demonstrate her worth through every decision and strategy. And gradually, everything began to fall into place. Sometimes. The best way to win isn't through direct confrontation, but by making things so clear that they can't be denied. With NovaX, the company Celeste had built from her darkest days, everything was now solid. The strategies she applied to green tech not only helped the company succeed, but also attracted a series of major clients to NovaX. She had created a completely new system, one that went against everything Maverick Communications had tried to maintain. Laura Green, once seen as the heir to the company, was now nothing more than a shadow in major negotiations. The strategies Laura had dismissed as too risky had now become industry standards. But Celeste didn't feel satisfaction in seeing Maverick's collapse. She didn't feel any sense of triumph. She simply kept moving forward, refining the strategies she had long built, never looking back at what had been. She understood that in life. Sometimes we don't need the recognition of others. We just need to look at what we've done and know that it's the result of relentless effort. When Celeste looked back at the past, she no longer felt anger. She had learned that forgiveness isn't for others, it's for ourselves. No one can change the past, but we can control what happens in the future. And that's what Celeste had done. She didn't just rebuild her career, she rebuilt herself. Every strategy, every decision was a testament to her strength and resilience, which she had regained after so much hurt. With the support of trusted partners, Celeste took NovaX to new heights. The company not only grew in revenue, but also became a model of innovation in the marketing industry. The strategies she applied helped not only major brands but also small businesses overcome significant challenges in building their brands. NovaX had become a recognized name, not just in marketing but also in the startup community. Meanwhile, Maverick Communications sank deeper into crisis. Their biggest clients began to leave, seeking companies with fresher, more modern strategies. Laura Green began to realize that what she had built wasn't enough to keep the company afloat. Her projects were no longer effective, and the failure could no longer be hidden. Soon, Sophie Allen and the other directors recognized that continuing with outdated strategies would only deepen their failure. Clients kept leaving, revenue numbers kept dropping, and all of it reflected the wrong decisions they had made. Now, they couldn't fix it. As Celeste saw what was happening, she didn't feel satisfaction. She wasn't happy witnessing Maverick's decline. She simply kept doing her work, continuing to guide NovaX along the path she had set. There were times when she remembered Maverick, those days, the old colleagues she once thought would be with her till the end. But now, she knew that those people were no longer part of her journey. The day Celeste officially launched NovaX to the media, she didn't aim to defeat Maverick. Instead, she wanted to prove that success wasn't about revenge. It was about winning calmly, rightfully, and without regret. There was no anger, no smugness, just calmness, like someone who knows exactly where they stand and what they're doing. When Celeste spoke to the media at the launch event, she didn't mention Maverick, didn't bring up those who had betrayed her. She spoke only about NovaX and what the company would bring to the world. She spoke about innovation, real value, and trust. There was no hatred, no bitterness. She simply viewed everything with calmness, and that was her true strength. It was the strength of someone no longer controlled by the past, no longer held back by the pain that had come before. Celeste didn't just prove that she could rise from failure. She changed the way people viewed success. Success wasn't the result of revenge or competition. Success was the outcome of relentless effort, belief in oneself, and always walking the path you've chosen. Celeste didn't just win. She rebuilt everything from scratch. And when she looked back, there was nothing but a quiet smile, because she knew she deserved everything she had achieved. Life isn't always fair, and not everyone will recognize your worth from the start, but in the end, only those who persevere, who don't give up, and who know how to rise from failure can truly build a solid future. No need for confrontation, no need for revenge. All you need to do is prove you can succeed.